Well, hello. Today I would like to have a public calling for some scientific humility. All right? If you're a scientist and watching this, good for you. This message is for you. If you're not in the scientific community and you think of scientists as some kind of deity or new priesthood that hears directly from God or whatever the belief system is, they're people. They're not infallible. They have biases, they have agendas, they have belief systems, whether they think they do or they don't, and they're sometimes wrong. In fact, always kind of wrong. Even the best scientists got closer to the truth, like Newton discovering gravity, only to later be disproved essentially by Einstein, and Einstein's stuff's in question with quantum physics. So these are the brightest and the best of us, and they can capture pieces of the truth, but don't have the whole puzzle. And all science has ever done is disprove previous science, for the most part. Okay, that's kind of a generality. So, scientific humility, I'd like to bring up a story, one of my favorite stories of this example. Okay, so go back to the 1850s, Europe. There was this thing called childbed fever. All right, I think some people it's called like the Black Death of childbirth. And it was pretty serious. Something like 16% of moms that went into hospitals to deliver babies died. Okay, so this wasn't 16% of those infected died. That's like a mortality rate. It's just like pregnant, having a baby in a hospital, 16% chance of death. Okay, this is sweeping through Europe, and it lasted decades. No one had answers, but you better believe science was going to solve it. Okay? And so, here comes our hero. His name's Dr. Semmelweis. He's from Hungary. I think he was working at a hospital in Austria, and he got put in charge of it. His hospital had a unique situation where there was a med school involved there, and one side of the hospital was doctors and med students delivering babies, but they had a maternity ward for poor people with midwives doing deliveries. And he noticed mortality rates were significantly different. More people were dying with the doctors and med students than they were dying with midwives. And so, opportunity for science, right? You make an observation, you create a hypothesis, and you test it. All right? Very scientific. So, he started doing that. And he was running out of variables to check pretty quickly. I think he even checked, these are stories, but I think he even checked for things like evil spirits and even how priests were doing blessings, seeing if there's methods to how they're doing blessings that created different outcomes. He tried everything, and he was running out of options until one day a med student, or maybe it was a doctor, cut themselves with a scalpel while studying a cadaver and got a very similar fever to these mothers that were dying of childbed fever. And he created a hypothesis based on that observation that maybe there's something going on with the cadavers. Maybe the cadavers are doing it. So he started having the doctors wash their hands after working with cadavers before they go to the maternity ward to deliver babies. And instantly, as you can believe now, the death rate went significantly down, closer to that of the midwife maternity ward area. And so it was like, now we have something, right? And it was like, well, what do we have? No idea, because we didn't know about germs yet. We really didn't have the ability to know about germs yet. So his best theory was cadaver particles, which I got to give him credit for, right? So he was like publishing this, and he was trying to create this, trying to have other hospitals take on this experiment. Because you would think scientists would be like, wow, quite an observation. Let's test this. But guess what? Nobody was testing it. Why? Well, because it couldn't be, right? The problem couldn't have been the doctors. No. Because it was the doctors that were going to solve it. Okay? And so he met a lot of resistance to it. And one of the things going around in the scientific community at that time was, why was Dr. Semmelweis' theory wrong? Because gentlemen hands do not pass disease. It's true. That was a scientific thing at the time. And why? Well, at that time, the only people that got to be doctors were highly privileged people, like rich people, essentially. And so the level of entitlement in doctors at that time must have been off the charts, especially compared to now, where there's still some entitlement with us doctors, but at the time I could imagine. So anyway, gentlemen hands do not pass disease. So anyway, no one believed Dr. Semmelweis. No other hospital did it. He eventually lost his job, and then eventually he became this pariah. And before you know it, he was on the streets handing out pamphlets outside a hospital saying, like, don't you go in there, you're going to die. Probably sound crazy, and he was probably driven towards madness, which eventually he did die in a sane asylum of all things blood poisoning due to an infection after sustaining injuries. So quite a tragic story. Now years later we discovered germs, and now we had a theory, I should say a mechanism for his theory, or his hypothesis is a more accurate term, I believe. So of course that was after he died tragically, but nonetheless he's a hero, okay? And he was a scientist saying, like, this is my observation, this is working, this is saving lives, okay? But what happens is, in the medical community, the scientific community in general, is filled with dogma. And maybe I'll make a video about that specifically. But there's belief systems, and at that time it was like, there's no way we're the problem. We're going to solve this. There they were, you know, researching, like true scientists, cadavers, like, we're gonna find what's causing these deaths. Of course, these people just died of childbed fever, they're infected, and these doctors weren't washing their hands, probably weren't even using any kind of gloves or anything at the time, and then they go up there and deliver babies, only for those moms to get sick and die as well. Super tragic. Had to do with pride. And that's why, I mean, wisdom, it's probably Socrates that said this, it's like, wisdom is knowing that which you don't know. I think that's really wise, especially in times like this, when we all like to make proclamations, and the media likes to make proclamations like, well, listen, we don't have all the answers yet, okay? We need to listen to each other. We need to collect data together and start forming better hypotheses, asking better questions, right? Because we don't really have full answers. Remember, I talked about Newton and Einstein. They got us closer to the truth of gravity. We still don't understand gravity in its truest form, right? So we have a lot more to discover. They got us closer, all right? And they got closer by asking better questions. And so I think it's time to stop pretending like we know everything and just ask better questions and listen to each other. And I think that would be a good thing. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions, or stories, or comments, or concerns. Love to hear them. Okay, bye.